Hello, welcome to topic 3 of our training and development course. This one's on analysis. There are various ways that one can go about acquiring information about the organizational needs. I'll review a few of them with you now. The least expensive way to do it is through a survey, either a paper and pencil type survey that's distributed to employees, or it can also be done electronically where people sign in to an intranet or internet site and complete a series of questions online. The survey or questionnaire tends to be a forced choice kind of assessment tool. And by that I mean it does not allow for a fill in the blank or a paragraph response. It tends to be more either a numeric on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate something, or it could be a selection from a multiple choice being provided, an answer A, B, C, or D kind of an assessment. That makes it very easy to compare responses across respondents, but obviously it has the shortcoming that you don't get any kind of interactivity, follow-up questions. It's sometimes hard to discern if someone feels that their response would fall between two answers and they're forced to choose one. How does that impact the scoring, etc.? But clearly that is a commonly used way of collecting data where responses are given to some kind of a survey or questionnaire. Another approach is to do a telephone interview. That has the benefit of allowing people who are remotely located from the respondent to interact and engage with them. It also allows for some follow-up questions. If you hear someone is especially excited about a particular response, or if they're hesitant in giving other responses, it can perhaps indicate other things to be looking for. One of the detractions is that when it comes to scoring or rating responses, it's sometimes hard to take narrative responses and do anything more than perhaps theme them, collect those that seemed similar. So it's a little harder on the scoring side unless you go back to a forced choice. And even though you're interviewing them on the telephone, you're still asking, how would you score this numerically? Or which of the following choices is closest to your response? Another way is the face-to-face interview. What this sometimes allows you to do that the others don't is that it allows you to ask the follow-up question and have the person responding provide examples. So rather than saying, are you able to put together effective sales presentations? And then the person is free to answer yes, no, or maybe. You can say, and can you show me one and explain to me what made this a particularly good presentation? So it allows there to be a whole lot more follow-up and a whole lot more objectivity in the response being provided. Of course, the downside to this is it's obviously labor-intensive. It takes a lot of time to complete. And if you have multiple scorers or raters or interviewers, then you have to make sure that there's a reliability between how different people are scoring similar responses. Otherwise, you could have someone who's perhaps considered a hard grader and someone who's considered a very easy grader who look at the same response and come up with very different answers. So the face-to-face does allow for a whole lot more engagement and interactivity, but it comes sometimes at the cost of the inter-rater reliability and the cost of actually having to either fly people around or the time it takes to get the interviews completed. Another approach commonly used is observation. If the rater, the interviewer, the scorer can actually watch somebody as they do their job, you can get a whole lot more detailed in your assessment or analysis of how well the job is done, what some of the hurdles are that need to be overcome, whether the resources or tools that are being used on the job are appropriate for the task at hand. There is a downside to that, though, where sometimes the observer, by virtue of being an observer, can change the behavior of the dynamic. Either they get in the way, or because people know they're being observed, they sometimes change their behavior versus what they would do when they're not observed. So those are just some of the commonly used ways to do analysis. Each of them have obviously strengths, but they also have certain challenges that need to be considered in the decision of which forms of analysis to use. You can also use what's called archival data. And by that I mean you can go into the corporate files and look at job descriptions, look at performance appraisal, look at any other kinds of metrics that are collected by the company. It could be operational. What has been our revenue targets over the years and how close have we gotten to them? What is our current profit versus our trends from 5 or 10 years ago? How are we doing versus competition? Any kind of data that's been collected. The benefit to that obviously is that you don't have to interact or engage with people, take them away from their jobs, or create that Hawthorne effect that I referenced earlier, where people know they're being observed and they change their behavior. The document doesn't change their behavior no matter how many times it's accessed. Of course, you do have the downside there that the documentation may not reflect current reality because it's always past-based, and you don't really know the respondents who created the documentation, how closely aligned were they with each other. So when you look at performance appraisal data, one manager could have been a whole lot more stringent in requirements than another, yet they both gave an employee a score of satisfactory or exemplary. I don't really know, does that reflect true performance, or is that more a reflection on how the rater viewed the performance and gave it a particular score? After you've done the analysis, the next step would be to prioritize the needs. Come up with where are the gaps in skills, where are the things that fall into those KSAs, and begin to provide some sense of what the training needs to include.